What's going on, everybody? Brett here, and we are back playing some more Total War Warhammer 2. I'm going to be doing a 3v3 today, and this is going to be game 1 in a kind of a 3-part series. I already cast game 2. I wasn't sure if I would cast game 1, but fortunately, one of the players of this game was kind enough to send me the replay for the third game, so I thought, you know what, let me go ahead and cast the first game. It was a good one, and I think there was a lot of strategy, a lot of tactics, and a lot of things to learn from this game. Especially if you're playing in a 3v3 with strangers, and how you need to be working as a team and coordinating in order to be successful. So of course I'm going to be playing as Norska today, and let me go ahead and put it in slow-mo. We're on the same map that we were in the last episode, I guess you could call it, and this is why, if you remember in the last episode, I said I thought that our opponents were going to deploy on this hill. This hill is an excellent hill for artillery, and it gives them such a huge view of the battlefield. And in the other video, they end up, kind of deploying here, using the forest and this ridge line as a bit of a defensive perimeter. But here, taking advantage of this hill, taking advantage of at least the skaven and the dwarves' artillery. It doesn't look like the dwarves actually brought any artillery. Interesting. Yeah, that's pretty surprising, but the skaven brought enough for everyone, of course, with warp lightning cannons, plague claw catapults, 3 warp lightning cannons, 2 plague claw catapults. That's plenty of artillery. And then with this huge line of thunderers here from the dwarves, just absolutely massive volleys of fire that can come through from them. Even the Deathglow bombardiers, the warp fire throwers, all of these ranged weapons are going to be very well protected by chevron dwarf warriors, and tomb guards with halberds also very highly chevron. Interesting play with iron breakers out on the flanks, with Longbeards with great weapons supporting them. So a very nice defensive shell here to protect all of their artillery superiority. Belagar Ironhammer, a nice tanky lord. You've got Lord Skrolk here, pretty much the most meta pick you can get. Lots of summons, and a Warplock Engineer, one of my favorite units on the Skaven roster. I feel like they don't get enough love, but with these guys, and you just take some of their items and abilities, and just the Warp Lightning, that one spell alone, you can rack up hundreds of kills with them over the course of a long battle. An Assassin in the back, some Gutter Runner Slingers with poison here to potentially kite out skirmishers, more Longbeards in the back to protect. They also give a bit of an encouragement aura, so they're nice for keeping Skaven fighting. Actually never really thought about it like that. You have to think outside the box in 2v2s and 3v3s, because using Longbeards to buff the leadership of Skaven is kind of a ridiculous, tactic. I like it though. I like it a lot. The Ushapti off to the side here in these kind of scary row of 3 units. Just look at them like standing ready to kill. Super heavy armor piercing. They are also highly chevron. So our opponents here are loving the chevrons. That's something that I avoid kind of at all cost. I much prefer to go wide rather than invest in chevrons. But the armor piercing of the Ushapti is going to be good against our dwarven allies. Going to be great against the dark elves as well if they try to go a bit heavier in terms of armor. And here we have a standard Tomb King. It's a pick that I like. Cheaper than Cetra. He doesn't come with the magic, but he still comes with my Will Be Done for a bit of an AoE buff, as well as Scorpion armor. So as long as his hit points stay above 50%, he gets 22% ward save, which is pretty nice. You really kind of want to bring healing with that, Lore of Nehekara, to keep him topped off, to make sure that he maintains that 22% ward save. I don't see a caster from the Tomb King player. Yeah, I don't see one anywhere. I could easily be missing it. But yeah, I don't really see a lot of units, period, from the Tomb King's player. Just the halberds, highly chevroned. And then you've also got this Necrosphinx, the standard variant. This is not the Regiment of Renown who has the magic damage and the fire damage, the Sphinx of Uksef. But this is still a pretty monstrous opponent regardless. Going to be very good at going 1v1. Let's say I had decided to take Mammoths, or our Dark Elf ally had decided to take Hydras, or Charybdis, or something like that. The Necrosphinx would be great at dueling it, whereas the Tomb King on his War Sphinx here is really great at dealing with piles and piles of infantry. So the last thing I think I didn't want to miss was the Doom Wheel here off to the side. I love in the unit description it just says Zap. So as it runs around, it shoots Warp Lightning in every direction, and it's a chariot unit that's going to be very powerful against the dwarves. So alright, our opponent's deployment makes sense. Their unit selections make sense. They took the high ground. They took the hill. They have the artillery advantage. So that means we have to come to them. So I had an inkling based on the factions we were fighting. I honestly expected some bone giants, Ushapti great bows as well. So I expected that we would be advancing under a hail of fire, right? And when I looked at my allies' unit selections, I realized that we did not have any sort of artillery at all. The dwarf player had gone very elite. You see here hammers, peak gate guard hammers, Norgling's iron breakers. I mean, these are extremely expensive units. The Scolder Guard, and while very fun, another Belagar iron hammer on the field. Flame cannon as well. Thunderers in the front and a bit of a, defensive kill box. While that's very fun, against artillery, single shots from artillery pieces are going to kill dozens sometimes of these types of elite infantry. And if you're the one that has to advance, you're not going to be able to play with this kind of defensive geometry, and you're just going to get absolutely smashed. So at this point in the battle, I'm directing my allies, look guys, we have to move forward. We have to advance. They have the hill, they have the artillery. We have to go to them. And pretty sad because my Dwarven allies army is not built to move. And the Dark Elf army, Dread Spears in the front, kind of in a boxy formation. Not good versus artillery. Very easy to lose more and more unit models than you would like. We have Dark Shards with shields. So we have the repeater crossbows here. Gotta love how these guys move. They place them in kind of the notches in their shields as they advance. So they're going to be great at dealing with armor, but they have a very low range. 125 range compared to the 160 of the Dwarven ranged units, and that's going to make it tough for them to skirmish. They really have to get in range, and that's where their silver shields come in. It allows them to take that first volley and then to begin to return fire. 3 units of Hargoneth Executioners in the back. So the heavy can opener units of the Dark Elf line, I like that he kept them in the back, sort of in reserve, but this very boxy formation is going to do very poorly against the artillery that our opponents are currently rocking. Really want to spread these guys out, take a bit of a route here to come up and surround them, force them to allocate assets to defend that flank, and maybe allow me to scoot through the forest to get in there. And I am saving my composition and things for last. Guys, that's intentional. He has a Sorceress with the Lore of Fire. Very good against the Tomb Kings. Not bad against the Skaven, depending on what you bring. And I see here we have the Burning Head, which is good at roasting Skaven. Flaming Sword of Ruin. Great AoE buff for your front line. Very good on Hargoneth Executioners. Cascading Fire Coat and just straight up Fireball. Sometimes I'll bring a Sorceress of Fire, something like that, and I'll just bring Fireball and spam that out for the entire battle. End up doing a ton of damage versus either infantry, or if you just want to single target lords or snipe people, it's very good for that. And then we have Lokir Felhart himself. Have no doubt he's got most of his abilities. Foe Seeker's fine to keep him topped off in terms of his vigor. The Dreaded Duelist is a must bring. Plus 26 melee attack and 27 melee defense. On a 60-second cooldown that lasts for 22 seconds, it makes him a monster to try and take down. And then Deadly Onslaught. So interesting choice here not to bring his Kraken Helm, which gives him regeneration. It's pretty much the reason you bring him, in my opinion. Dreaded Duelist plus the Kraken Helm makes him an extremely hard target to take out when he's on foot. Yeah, he's a very scary duelist in that instance. And then I don't want to forget this unit of Cold One Knights off to the side, these Dark Elves riding Velociraptors. They're going to be going up and around the forest, I don't blame them, trying to take a very circumspect route to hopefully get into the back line and shut some things down. So it's at this point, let's go ahead and check out my army. I deployed completely in the forest. I recognized our weakness in terms of artillery. I did not want to be taking fire as soon as the battle started, and I wanted to see if I could put pressure on our opponents in such a way that would allow for my allies' armies to advance. So I felt, since our communication was a bit weak, so guys, if you get the chance in a 3v3 or 2v2 to be in Discord with your allies, or to at least, type quickly with them, but we were having some communication issues. Sometimes the chat here is a little complicated to use if you're a newer player. So we were trying to communicate, coordinate. I was drawing arrows to kind of show where we should advance, how I was going to advance up and through the forest, and use the forest as cover. But there was a bit of a breakdown in communication, so I realized that in this moment, perhaps as the more skilled player on the team, that I would use my army in such a way to allow my other allies to advance, even if it meant it was to my own detriment, right? I knew I would take some heavy casualties to do this, but if it meant that my allies could get into the fight somewhat unimpeded, then it would all be worth it, because they have some pretty heavy-hitting units. And you'll see here we're in slow motion. I'm not even moving yet, because the range of the artillery pieces is something like right here, I should say, something like this. And I'm not going to move until my allies have pretty much reached that maximum range of the artillery, and then it's at that point that I'm going to start to advance, right? So at this stage, I'm pretty sure every single unit I have is hidden. And let me go over them real quick. And I had to bunch them up a bit to get them into the forest. On my flanks, I have 2 groups of Marauder Spearmen, good anti-large, charge defense against large. In the center, I have some standard Marauders, flanking 2 units of Marauder Champions. So these guys are going to be the beasts of my front line. 80 armor, bronze shields, huge combat stats with the ability to eventually get their rage meter all the way up to stage 3, which gives them melee attack, leadership, and 11 physical resistance. I love those dudes. And just a standard Marauder Chieftain, which ultimately allowed me to go very cheap. And I took Fight or Die just to provide that leadership bonus and melee attack. And in the background, I also have a Famir with the Lore of Shadows. I like Lore of Shadows, especially against the Dwarves, especially against the Tomb Kings. Also not bad against the Skaven, but I decided to take 3 very offensive spells, which all came in handy this battle. One of which, Malkoth's Mystifying Miasma. It slows, does damage over time. It's a pretty weak spell, but it's also very cheap. I also decided to take the Penumbral Pendulum, which I'm going to get several very sweet ones this battle. If you can already see how well lined up these units are, yeah, we'll see how good I can land some of those. And if you overcast them, they do heavy armor piercing, which is great versus the dwarves. And ultimately why I decided to go with the Lore of Shadows as opposed to Death or Fire, I believe is their other choice. And then Pit of Shades, which once again overcast does better armor piercing damage. But against the dwarves and the Skaven, they have mostly, and I would even say even the Tomb Kings have a ton of infantry. Really, infantry is kind of the focus of all of their builds. Tomb Kings, of course, have monsters. Dwarves and Skaven have artillery and a few monsters on the Skaven side. But for the most part, you're never going to miss a chance to get a Pit of Shades. And then I also have on him From the Mist to give him 22% missile resistance. Nothing feels worse than getting him sniped out by, let's say, a bunch of Thunderers. And giving him that missile resistance is pretty nice. And I think he already has a bit of an innate missile resistance. So we can see he's up to 37%. So that's very good. And they're not pushovers in battle. I mean, they have 65 armor, as well as they do magic damage and armor sundering. So if you can put them on the same target as, let's say, your Skinwolf Werekin, who I have stripped down completely to be cheap, because these guys are monsters. And I'm going to need these until the end of the game. I'm going to be using him to duel certain things this battle. And never be surprised if you're playing Norska and the last unit on your side of the battlefield is the Skinwolf Werekin. It's regen, physical resistance, make it very tough. It also provides an encouragement aura. It has, let's say, 20% physical resistance. It causes fear. It has a bit of a fire weakness, but that shouldn't be an issue against our current enemies. And then, of course, immune to psychology and frenzy. So it looks like the first bits of Warp Lightning are going to rip into probably these Dread Spears here. Let's see. Take a bit of a slow-mo shot. Oh my god, the brutality. Let's see if that's all that dies. Nope, they're going to clip the edge of this formation and get one more. So with that single volley, they killed 17 models on our Dark Elf allies side of the battlefield. And at this point, I think I'm going to start moving up. Yeah, and the last thing I want to mention is I took 2 units of the Skin Wolves, the armored variant. 70 armor, very similar to the Werekin. You want to use these guys almost like Shock Cav. And sometimes if they're fighting other, monstrous units, you can let them stand and fight. They're going to be very good against the Ushapti. They're going to be very good against the Tomb King, the Necrosphinx, these types of targets. And they're also great can opener units for fighting against the Dwarf Warriors. So let's go ahead and get into the battle. The Skaven player is trying to snipe out the artillery piece here, the flame cannon. Oh, that is so brutal. The Warp Lightning Cannon is deadly accurate. There goes the Plague Claw Catapult. Oh, they're going to snipe out the Sorcerers of the Lore of Fire. She's trying to get some kind of spell off, I'm sure, before the battle can start. And this artillery fire is just absolutely devastating. Let's see what she can do. And she's going to go for, I think, a Burning Head down the lines of the Tomb King. So great choice. But it looks like a poor cast. I don't know. I think that was just a bad angle. I'm not sure if it's supposed to have that much variance in which direction it could go in. Maybe they overcasted it, and maybe the overcast is what has that kind of poor variance. But had this gone straight down the lines, it would have killed a ridiculous amount. But the way it went, it didn't kill like anything, which is pretty unfortunate because she took a ton of fire to get that shot off. And there's my pendulum, guys. That did damage. That is a highly accurate ability. I think it was overcast, so I did tons of damage to their armor. You'll see here no models died, which is unfortunate. One model died, but the amount of damage done is going to soften them up for another one and follow up. My Marauder champions are getting into the fight here. My Skin Wolves are trying to counteract the charges of Dushapti, who have 9 ranked chevrons on them, which is a ton. But at this point, the Deathblow Bombardiers have a nice position from which to fire into my infantry. My Marauder Spearmen break. I think this is called Plague is the name of this spell. It's going off in my front line from the Skaven player from Scroll. Warpfire Throwers are going to be absolutely roasting my Marauders. I'm not sure why they're not engaged in combat. I thought for sure that I had everything engaged, but this is pretty bad. They should be charging the Warpfire Throwers right now. My Javelins are kind of the name of the game, though. I actually didn't go over them all that much. But I got another Pendulum just now off on these 2 units of Halberds, and I did get more kills there. My Javelins are trying to gun down Ushapti. They're trying to gun down the Necrosphinx. They have decent armor piercing. They're not the Axe variant. The Axe Thrower variant has better armor piercing, but they have better range and are cheaper. And if you're going to buy 6 of them, I think that only equates to about 5 of the Axe Thrower variants, which is just significantly worse. Warpfire Thrower is absolutely crushing my infantry right now. I'm not sure why that unit dropped its orders, or if I just didn't, allocate units to that fight. But this unit of Warpfire Throwers should be gone. And a shot in the back there from the Warp Lightning Cannon onto the Tomb King. But my front line has collapsed. I'm going to need to be reorganizing, regrouping. The Dwarf player has finally got into range. Some of their Thunderers are online, not all of them. Spoilers kind of helping out here, shooting at Dwarf Warriors. Thunderers trying to pick their targets, maybe dueling a bit against other Thunderers. The Dark Elf player on the other side is having a tough time. The Dwarves have managed to hold them back with very few units. Meanwhile, the Skaven artillery continues to rain fire. The Flame Cannon's still online with 3 models, shooting at the Tomb Guards with halberds. Not a bad choice, but there are tons of blobs up here they could be shooting at, and it looks like they're going to rout off pretty quickly. Pretty happy to see that the Warp Lightning Cannons are shooting through the trees at one of my cheapest units on the battlefield. The only things I really care about are making sure that my Marauder Hunter Javelins stay online. Using a Melkoth Mystifying Miasma on these Plague Monks, trying to degen them as quickly as possible. I'm pretty sure these are summon units. I think so. It's hard to tell when they have this little aura. Maybe not, but we're able to break them off. Here are some summon units of Plague Monks. And we have a bit of a pit fight here. Lots of hammers from my ally helping me surround these Tomb Kings. They have armor sundering as well. So with a bit of armor sundering from my Veil Fiend and the Peak Gate Guard, we're able to really lower the armor of the Necrosphinx and the Tomb King, making my Javelins much more effective. We're trying to get rid of these Ushapti. Belagar is in the fight. We have the Premier Veil Fiend in the fight. My Marauder Chieftain got crushed pretty hard. My Skin Wolves are taking a break to regen for a moment as I regroup my infantry to kind of see where I need to go, so that I'm not just throwing them away in a terrible fight. I get a Pit of Shades here off on these Thunderers, and it's going to do decent damage. They were well blobbed up, so I think I killed like 8 models, something like that, and just do pretty good damage to the others. But the Skaven player has switched one of their Warp Lightning Cannons onto my Skin Wolves, a great target. The Cold One Knights tried to shut down some of this artillery. 52 kills, not bad. Some of the Dark Shards have rallied. They haven't shot almost any of their ammunition, which feels pretty bad. These dread spears here are caught on, you know, a unit of iron breakers and some dwarf warriors, but they're not doing much, unfortunately. It looks like all the Hargoneth executioners were focused down and killed pretty summarily. Yeah, rough. So my Balefiend gets in here, benefiting a lot from this runesmith, who's giving us a bit of a ball of power. I was trying to say before I stuttered ridiculously. Marauder chieftains here, trying to hold back these thunders, keeping them from firing, but they're probably in guard mode, so they're still able to shoot. And these Deathglow bombardiers, I've got my Marauder hunters with javelins, and we're trying to skirmish out the Skaven, and I would have thought, if you asked me, that they would be able to quite handily defeat these 3 units in a skirmish battle. But it seems like they're just not. We're losing to them. They have 100 armor, but I thought the sheer volume of fire plus armor piercing damage, we'd be able to get through to them. And with their low leadership, they would be routing at this point. But that's just not how it worked out. So we're trading with these units. We probably could have just sent them into melee to beat them back. Some of my Marauder hunters with javelins are trying to help out. We're throwing at the Longbeards, at the Tomb Guards with halberds. My Marauder champions are in this kind of forward position here, fighting off Thunderers and Iron Breakers, doing their best. They're not meant to fight Iron Breakers, that's for sure. Man, that Warp Fire thrower. 84 kills on that bad boy. Deathglow Bombardiers doing great. Both units over 100 kills. That's kind of unbelievable. Very good use of them. They're a unit you don't get to see very often, and I'm excited that they use them. The Quarrelers here shooting at the War Sphinx, the War Kitty as he's sometimes called, sending it back to the pits. But my Famir Balefiend has been routed off. I think my Chieftain is dead at this point or running completely off the battlefield. I've been using my Werekin this entire battle, or for at least about half of this battle, to duel this Doom Wheel. And the Doom Wheel is currently fighting, I think, in the forest. I'm not sure if it's getting debuffs from that. But my Werekin keeps getting knocked over, but it's not really losing. It's actually winning thanks to its regen. It's just going to take a while because he can't really stand on his own. Marauder Chieftain rallies with 400 HP. Some of my Skin Wolves are completely gone, while the rest, I think I have a group of 6 here. And at this point it looks pretty hopeless. So many of the tools for all 3 of these armies are still online. We weren't able to kill the Tomb King here. I feel like we should have been able to get him. I focused him so much in the early game, and the Dwarf player definitely focused him. But we have a little pocket of power here. A Runesmith, Belegar Iron Hammers, some Norgalings Iron Breakers, and my Marauder Chieftains are all standing and fighting. Really wish somebody would shut down these Thunderers right here on this hill. They're getting a bit into the Warp Lightning Cannon, but now my champions are going to rout. I'm trying to rally my Marauder Hunters to continue to fire, to put some damage on some units. If there's any chance at all that we can win, I want to try. My Skin Wolves get in amongst the Warp Fire throwers and finally shut them down. Oh, my ally has a full health unit of Longbeards with great weapons over there, not doing anything. That's unfortunate. And so we're able to kill off the Warp Fire throwers. Let's see if we can do something with these Skin Wolves, get them into the back line. Rally somehow, some way. There goes my Chieftain. Group of Dark Shards with some ammunition left, taking shots into, it looks like the back of these Dwarf Warriors. Probably going to kill all those guys. Hargoneth Executioners rallying in the 4th quarter, but they're so beat up. The Skaven still have lots and lots of leadership left. They have an Assassin they've barely used. Lord Skrulk hasn't engaged in combat. The Warlock Engineer is being used to chase off this Runesmith. And they have their Belegar Iron Hammer, who's got tons of his abilities, and he's just going to be standing here, holding down the line while the Thunderers turn and shoot. And I'm no longer very well able to support. I'm going to use my Marauder Hunters with javelins that have run out of ammunition to try and tie down the Thunderers and keep them from firing at us while we try to put some sort of game plan together. These chevroned Iron Breakers with 85 unit models left are going to be absolute linebackers. I don't think there's anything on the battlefield that can take out Iron Breakers, except for maybe my Skin Wolf Werekin. We drive off the Longbeards. They did a bit of a charge at us, but we were able to gun them down with our remaining ammunition on this unit here. Plus with the help of the Famir Balefiend. many kills did we get on this guy? 57? That's not too bad. I don't know if I have any magic left. I'm trying to get up to some more magic. I probably have enough for maybe another Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma. Not sure who I would use it on in this circumstance. The dwarves are all very resistant to magic, but they're pretty much all that's left on the battlefield also. The skaven have artillery crews that have no ammunition. This Warp Lightning Cannon still has tons of ammunition. They're gunning down this runesmith that tried to rally. The Thunderers still have lots of ammunition, surprisingly. And we're going to use some of our buddies here, our shirtless bros, to try and tie down the heavily armored beasts of the Ironbreakers. And that may not go very well for us. But with the Famir debuffing their armor, he doesn't seem to be doing yet. There it goes, down to 95 armor. They're still pretty beefy. Where is my Werekin? Where is my Werekin? Huh, I seem to have lost sight of... Oh, there he is. So I sent him into the thick of this to help out these Peak Gate Guard and the Quarrelers. We managed to rout off the Thunderers. I think I did a bit of a charge in the back to break them. Our Belegar is nearly dead. Theirs is completely fresh. And a fresh Belegar is pretty dangerous. And he's beating the heck out of these Skolder Guard. These dudes got 148 kills. I wish I'd have seen them on the battlefield when they were fighting. Could have taken a look at them. But they're routing now. And in a 1v1 duel, without all of these offensive tools, which I think he probably propped already, and that being the Revenge Incarnate, giving him massive weapon damage, melee attack, and leadership. Without that left, I'm pretty sure the Skinwolf Werekin takes this fight 1v1 simply due to regen. But Thunderers are still aligned, and they're going to shoot down my Werekin and cause us ultimately to rout. So crazy game. Crazy game. Yeah, that whole game I felt like a bit of a sacrificial lamb, kind of going in first, taking on the toughest units of the Tomb King's roster, while also trying to soften up targets for my allies. Very interesting build here from the Tomb King player, opting to go with nothing but chevrons. If your micro is pretty poor and you're a newer player, this isn't a bad strategy. I could see doing this. I'm not saying that this person's a bad player or a new player. I'm just saying that if you aren't confident in your micro in a 3v3 scenario, don't hesitate to do something like this. Take elite units and chevron them up, and then do your best to micro them as effective as you can. The real game players in this battle were the Skaven artillery pieces, who decimated whole units before we were able to engage, and my inability on my flank to shut down these Deathglow Bombardiers and this Warp Fire Thrower ultimately spelt doom, I think, for my infantry. I didn't have the mobile tools necessary to go up and around. I could have potentially used my Skin Wolves in a bit more of a flanking fashion, but I saw a chance to engage Ushabti and tie down the Necrosphinx so that my Marauder Hunters could fire, and that was my ultimate strategy, and it paid off. I mean, we decimated the Tomb King player. However, we were never really able to shut down the artillery. And the Dwarven gun line was online for the entire battle. Despite, our efforts to hurt them, we were never really able to shut them down. The Ironbreakers, of course, did great. And then let's take a look. We can see we did fine. The Werekin, only 49 kills, but that's because it spent half the battle dueling a Doom Wheel, which was well worth it. Doom Wheels are expensive. We can see here it got 31 kills. It may very well have run a train on us if it had been allowed to just go through our back lines and shut us down that way. Javelins did fine considering what they were shooting at, and our front line held for I think as long as it reasonably could. Our Dwarven ally, the Hammers, did great once they were finally able to make it into combat. The Skolder Guard, man, I wish I had been able to see what they were doing. The Flame Cannon probably racked up most of these kills on Tomb King infantry, and yeah, the Ironbreakers pretty much held to the end there. Same with the Peak Gate Guard. And our poor Dark Elf ally, I think they took the brunt of the artillery fire. The Dread Spears, you'll see it 0, 1, 1, 7, 0. I mean, they did essentially nothing but absorb artillery fire this game. And then by the time they were able to get into combat, the Harganeth Executioners were probably so beat up, there was really nothing they could do. This is the unit I think that was just shooting into the back of some rally dwarves, and I know that he attempted to get in behind them with the Cold One Knights. That was a very good play. I think if I could critique our builds a bit, I would probably drop the Marauder Champions, get 2 more standard Marauders, maybe drop 1 or 2 of the Hunters, and go for either some Chariots, the Ice Wolf Chariots, or just some Marauder Horse Masters or Horsemen, something to give me some mobility in the event that I needed to shut down threats like artillery. And perhaps here, maybe cut back on some of the shields on the Dark Shard, save a couple hundred gold, drop maybe 2 or so of the abilities off the Sorceress, the Lore of Fire, and boom, you've got another unit of Cold One Knights. 2 units is much more deadly than 1. I don't have to tell you that. It's 100% better. And, you know, we were obviously having fun, guys. These are not meta competitive builds, so don't think I'm taking this too seriously. And this person, you know, Cooked Grenade obviously wanted to have some fun. You don't take a Flame Cannon in the Skulder Guard if you're not trying to have fun. But I think with just a few tweaks, had we been coordinating to anticipate the artillery duel, we could have put together a pretty nice force here with between 3 players that included a lot of mobile elements, and we would have eventually, I think, worn them down, gotten to the cookie jar, so to speak, and shut down their artillery. And if you go back and watch the last video, you'll see that's exactly what we did. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. I hope you enjoyed this video and this look at kind of the world of 3v3s. And big thanks to everyone who played this game with me. Big thanks to Cooked Grenade and Miro Nava. I'm pretty sure you guys both subscribed. I appreciate that a lot. And Miro Nava, I hope I'm saying that right, ended up sending me the replay to the 3rd game, which I was not a part of. So it's going to be fun for me to watch as well. And it'll be kind of my first take on that game, and we'll see what kind of strategies we can divine from there. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one, guys. Take care.